A quick word about Rainforest Alliance. Those who do not know, we are a conservation organization that was created in 1987. We have just been through our 25th anniversary, and we aim to conserve biodiversity by changing production systems and practices, business practices, and consumers' behavior. And we pride ourselves as an organization which is seeking conserving biodiversity and in whose mission business is written very explicitly.
That's your first minute gone, Mohammed. So can we now have your recommendations, please?
Oh, my recommendation. Okay. Can I skip that and give it to somebody else because I lost my 5 minutes?
Well, Mike, are you ready? 2 minutes, please.
Well, I think well, forget to do. Well, the first, learning from the think tank. First of all, I just arrived not that long ago, but the idea of the think tank itself, I think, is extremely helpful as a way of catalyzing ideas between the NGOs and the businesses, and I think it's just a terrific idea. It's a way to take policy and then begin to shape them into something very tractable. And as a company that dedicated R&D and working in agriculture and food security, it's extremely welcome. And I think the second thing would be one recommendation for changing pace is to continue to back these unions that we have here. I mean, for the World Business Council for Sustainable Development to be working so closely with IUCN, I think is terrific. Just judging from the progress of these public-private partnerships over the last couple of years, they're really picking up pace. We're converging on a lot of the same agendas, and I think looking forward over the next 5 years, it's going to be terrific. We're going to accomplish a lot together. So thank you very much for the opportunity to be up here today, Peter.
Thank you very much, Mike. Allard, over to you.
Okay, Peter, thank you. I'm thrown between hope and despair. Early this morning I was pretty hopeful, actually. Not because of the panel that was here this afternoon, but the reflections are, so who's missing at the table? In both sessions this morning we had only 1 or 2 from government. And I think it was Copenhagen, Rio, we sense there's a continuous seat empty at the table. So in order to make progress, observation and recommendation, those bodies that have the convening power, IUCN, possibly WBCSD, try and get government back at the table, because otherwise we're never going to get the scale. The other thing is, it's extremely important, in order to get the scale, that we speak the same language. We may come at it from different perspectives, but we need to speak the same language. And if we try and go back to the drawing board, and I've heard a number of comments today that may not so much challenge the science or the need to get to the how to implement, but people that want to change entire accounting systems, or people that suggest that companies or NGOs need to start looking at the challenge at hand from an entirely different and alien perspective, that may be useful, but it will not get us to an how and to an acceleration. So speak the same language and focus on the outcomes. If we go back to the drawing board, if we go back to the underlying principles, if we go back to the underlying initiatives, we're never going to get to an outcome-focused debate. So that's the second recommendation, outcome-focused debate. Third recommendation I'd make, let's not try and get all the answers before we start, because otherwise we'll never start. So start and learn by doing. I mean, if anything, businesses are familiar with that, and I would hope NGOs would join that journey, and I would hope governments would be prepared to join the journey. Learn by doing, improve while you do it, build on best practice. So the fourth recommendation is, I think businesses do share best practice. However, I'm not sure NGOs share best practice as actively as we do within business sectors. I think businesses should share more best practice across sectors. And I wonder which governments share that best practice. Because we've had some best practice here at the table, impressed by Korea's progress. And look across Europe, look across the United States. How often do governments truly share best practice on an outcome-based solution? And the fifth recommendation is, pricing is good. Start with pricing carbon. We said it before, we said it many years, and continue to price so that people know what the trade-offs are and can make the smart choices and can start to innovate to get to the desired outcomes. I'll leave it at that, Peter.
Okay, Katie?
All right, great. First of all, it's an honor to be up here, so thank you for inviting me. And I was told that I was able to say whatever I want, so here goes. I am a future leader team, and I come out this with a slightly different perspective, but I'm sure many of you share this. I am a mom with 3 young kids, so health and happiness takes on an entirely new meaning to me, and I think that that's something that is really important to harness. I also don't have a lot of time, and so I'm impatient, want to cut to the chase on many things. Let's get things done, let's go through. Which leads me to one of the things that I picked up in this meeting was talk on standards and talk about the importance of them, and I fully agree with that. But I have a love-hate relationship with standards because I've been involved in a lot of standard development processes, and they're very complex, and there's a lot of stuff that goes on that is unnecessary. However, I found a recommendation out of these many presentations that I thought was really important and had to deal with scale, and that was focused from Loriana with IFC when she talked about the stakeholder development process and the focus on implementation. So trying to get a standard that actually can be implemented. That's extremely important. If you want to have a standard that people use, if you want to have scale, if you want to reach the laggards, as Sandra said, you got to have something that people can actually use. So that's one recommendation. And then on to the Future Leaders team. I am a member. We had been asked if we were going to solve all the world's problems, and we've already decided that we have. We are 25 companies from almost as many countries around the world, and we value happiness in addition. So we are going to create a metric and a way to go about solving this. But I do have a recommendation, and I think this is really important. We are Future Leaders teams with the World Business Council, and I think it would be good to also include a Future Leaders team with the IUCN as well.
That's a great idea. And for all the people who believe in happiness, tomorrow night in the World Leaders Dialogue, the former Prime Minister of Bhutan is in the room. I'm sure he's got 1 or 2 things to say about happiness. So we'll move over to Gary. Hey.
Hello. Peter, thanks, and I appreciate the invitation to share my reflections. There was a lot of learning value in listening to companies and some of the other presenters talk about the projects that they're doing. I work a lot with WBCSD's Forest Solutions team, so I hear a lot about what the forest companies, forest-based companies are doing. But to hear the other sectors' presentations, I learned a lot from them. Perhaps more importantly, though, I learned a new phrase or term that I think I'll use now, and that's the one that Allard said, tree-hugging value destruction. And for me, coming from outside business, it's a very interesting and very important phrase. And I think it suggests the challenge that we need to really encourage, again, from the outside where possible, and support the internal dialogue that needs to happen in these companies. And I appreciate you mentioning that, because I know Shell's going a long way in doing that, and what you said about all your employees being on board in the next 4 years or whatever the goal is. I think that's incredibly important. When you look at all the companies that aren't part of WBCSD, that really suggests that it's not just at the top, but it's all those folks inside those companies. So really, from our perspective, helping that discussion along is going to be important, and for all of us outside of business to support that. The recommendation that I would make, I come from an organization called the Forest Dialogue, so you might imagine that I would recommend that there be broader engagement and dialogue with companies, with the projects they're doing, not only with the customers that you have engagement with, but beyond the customers to the broader communities, and perhaps ones that you haven't been and aren't comfortable talking to, indigenous communities or forest-based communities, beyond that to cross sectors as well. And Forest Dialogue is beginning an initiative, Peter Gardner referred to it, it's the 5 Fs, the food, fuel, fiber, and forest. And we've been doing this work for over 12 years, and it's always been within the forest sector, and we've made decent progress. But now, because of the pressure on land from all these other interests, of course, food and the growing population, we are starting to expand our dialogue and our engagement outside the forest sector. And for us, it's a big challenge. And we know that the other sectors, like the agricultural sector and bioenergy, they don't necessarily have these kind of dialogue structures that the forest dialogue and the forest sector have. So we're looking forward to that, and we will encourage and are really pushing all the companies across all the sectors to engage either with the forest dialogue, obviously, on this 4Fs, 5Fs initiative, or begin and support dialogues in their sector.
Thank you. Vicky?
Thank you very much. I haven't been present in the morning sessions, so I just caught up the sessions this afternoon. First of all, I come from an indigenous peoples organization which is working with 17 countries in Asia, Africa, and Latin America. And I think this the dialogue that has to be fostered between indigenous peoples and private sector and business is really very crucial for good outcomes. You mentioned about outcomes, and when we talk about outcomes, I don't think we're just talking here about, of course, good products and maybe profit. We're also talking about outcomes in terms of more ecological sustainability and more equity amongst peoples, and I think those outcomes should also be factored into the discussions that we are having. Maybe I'm not going to make any other recommendation, but just to reinforce some of the things I've heard of the contribution from our colleague from Peru, where they made a national law on consultation with indigenous peoples. I think is a good practice. It may take some time before such kinds of consultations will bear fruit. But I think it's crucial that if you really would like to enhance the outcomes from your own private businesses, you need to talk, especially if your private business is land-based or it's related to the resources that are found in indigenous communities. There has to be a very substantial consultation and dialogues with these peoples. In the Philippines, we have a law that says we own the land. We have an Indigenous Peoples' Rights Act, which gives us titles to our ancestral domains. And I think if that is the situation, it's inevitable that the private sector should engage in a dialogue with us. And that the law also provides for free prior informed consent. And of course, we hear that it might discourage companies, but our view is that if it does, then maybe these are not very good companies, because good companies, we believe, are going to be very keen on really involving and getting the consent of the communities in which their businesses are working. Thank you.
Thanks, Vicky. Mohammed, were you able to find the file?
Yes.
Good man.
Thank you for giving my minute back. My learning from here and from elsewhere also is that the dialogue about commoditizing environment has evolved very significantly. A few years ago, people didn't want to talk about commoditizing environment. They thought it was inherently bad to think economic benefits of environment. We have come a long way. Today, I think everybody feels, or most people feel, anything that is not value will not be protected. Protecting societal value in long-term conservation is hostage to public policy that seldom looks beyond the next election. And we also saw a manifestation of this in this hall today, where so few governments are represented. So who are we talking to here? And who is to play what role in this Congress and going out of it is a question that needs to be addressed. Markets and civil society increasingly working together, in our experience in Rainforest Alliance, but in other experiences as well, have demonstrated that clearly defined and enforceable rights to natural resources can stimulate conservation action. They have also illuminated the path to public policy, and a very good example of it is European Union sourcing policies that have definitely been influenced by the third-party certification standards and the momentum that it created. I have been involved in the UK National Ecosystem Assessment, and very recently the UK government commissioned a team to look at the business opportunities in National Ecosystem Assessment. From there, biodiversity offsets and carbon sequestration were the obvious winners. The market is relatively more mature or is maturing. But interestingly, new opportunities have also emerged, as in the amenity housing market, for example, health and rural tourism and waste disposal. And to me, one of the fascinating examples of ecosystem services is that Crossrail, which is another underground tunnel in London, is collaborating with Right Society for the Protection of Birds, where all its waste would be taken and used for the creation or rehabilitation of an island in the Thames Delta, and which will create further economic opportunity and create a natural asset that didn't exist before. So there are tons of opportunities and examples how ecosystems services can be converted into economic opportunities.
And you did it definitely, one more line.
One more. Business leadership is making a huge difference. Unilever commitment to sourcing sustainably produced tea has triggered actions in more than 17 countries, which the government process, if it were dependent on it, would have taken years to do. My one recommendation, and before that, one comment. I think one of the biggest challenges is how do you bring in small producers and owners? Because the transaction cost of ecosystem benefits to small producers are not small and affordable under the current regime of the marketplace. My one recommendation is a very robust global system of sustainability assurance. The current approach of assurance standards, fragmented as it is a good beginning, but evidently inadequate. If today all the governments in this Congress decided we are ready to go post-Kyoto regime, we are ready to go post-Red Plus, I think conservation community will find itself on a limb because they are not prepared. How they can assure the benefits to the investors in this region. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mohammed. I was close to speed dating. Thank you very much. I know I do, you know, pay you no respect for all the knowledge experience that's on the table, but it's very powerful to get recommendations in 2 minutes only, because these formats of meeting from 10 till 5 in the afternoon are killing me. So I hope you like it too. Give them a warm hand of applause. Health and happiness is the one thing that sticks out for me this day. So thanks for that, Dr. Justine. Well done. Björn, the floor is yours to introduce the closing speaker.
Well, thank you very much to Peter and the panelists for final reflections. And now we have the final reflections. And I'm very pleased to introduce the third representative from the IUCN management, We had Julia Maton-Lefebvre in the morning, we had Paul Pedersen, and now we have the president of IUCN. A very old friend and one of the pioneers in the sustainability movement since the very beginning. So it's great to introduce Ashok, because you better go that way, because otherwise you're going to the stair. Got that. And Ashok is the president of IUCN, and in that capacity plays a very important role and has a very long perspective on how to cooperate and scale up. So, Ashok, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Bjorn. I'm here under false pretenses because the bosses, the Director General, the Deputy Director General, everybody's spoken, and I don't want to contradict them, otherwise company policy might go all over the place. But being chairman of the board has its privileges, and I am of course entitled to be way ahead of them, so I can tell you what I think IUCN's policies in the field of